is 9/11 Freefall.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of 9/11 Freefall. I'm your host, Andy Steele, and tonight the guest is Wico Valk. Wico is an architect from the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is where Richard Gage, founder of AE 9/11 Truth, is going to be speaking tonight as part of his European tour. Wico's one of the organizers for that event, so he'll be talking about that, and he'll also be talking about some of the controversy that's been drummed up by certain people in the media over Richard presenting there this evening. And we got my own little European tour going on in the show, I noticed. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed a guy from Ireland, and then last week I interviewed Matt Campbell from England, and of course tonight we got Wico. So let's see how long I can keep this going here. But no, Wico's a really interesting guy. He's going to be talking about also just generally what it's like to be awake to this evidence over there in Europe, realizing what really happened that day, the controlled demolitions of buildings 1, 2, and 7 on September 11th. So before I play the interview for you, we're going to do what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that beginning now. And that is 10 seconds. Wico Valk is an architect in the Netherlands. He has over 20 years of experience in designing large-scale residential projects. He has designed and coordinated various national and international projects, being responsible from the conceptual stage to completion. He has led project teams with colleagues from all over the world, and he is one of the signatories to AE 9/11 Truth's petition calling for a new investigation into the destruction of Towers 1, 2, and 7 of the World Trade Center on September 11th. He's also a member of AE's translation team, so we may talk a little bit about that too. But Wico, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
All right, thank you.
Now, before we dive into 9/11 and everything that's going on right now in your country in relation to 9/11 Truth, I want our audience to know a little bit more about you. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background.
I'm 52. I'm married. I've got 2 kids. As you said, I'm a licensed architect, and until 6 years ago, when the economic developments changed my working life, and I didn't have much work at that moment, and I had plenty of time to think about other stuff than only working in housing and architecture. Before that, I think it was in 2006 that I discovered on some websites that there was something wrong about the official story about 9/11, and I, like everybody else, you don't really want to believe it. So I found a very good website that was Architects and Engineers, and since I'm an architect, I was naturally drawn to that website, and they were quite convincing, and it took me, I think, a couple of nights before I finally saw that I had to surrender to the truth. Let's call it that.
That is a very good way of putting it. Interesting way of putting it. You know, when 9/11 happened, I'm assuming you were watching it along with the rest of the world. I mean, what did you initially think when you saw the 2 towers come down in that way? And did you even know about Building 7 until you started looking at it on the internet a couple of years later?
First, the towers 1 and 2. I remember we were watching television in the office, and on a very small black and white television. But at that moment, the towers were still standing, and I remember that I was thinking, I hope they will have repaired those buildings before I go there and be on top of it, because that was my wish. It was my plan to go to New York the next year, and one of my dreams was to be on the observatory deck of the WTC buildings. So when I saw the smoking buildings, and I thought, well, it had burned before, and I was convinced that they would be able to repair it. So in that way, I already knew that they couldn't collapse. But when we saw them collapse, well, I thought like everybody else, almost everybody else thought, well, they were not constructed very well, or, well, what could it be else than the fire and the planes, and so I continued for 5 years believing the official story. It gave a little knot in my stomach, but, well, life goes on, and it was far away, and I had lots of things to do, so yes, that was it.
What about Building 7?
Building 7, I heard of that because I was watching television all night, and I heard it, but didn't cause any doubts with me at that moment.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. It was the middle of the night for you over there in the Netherlands while it was happening during the day here for us. You know, quick story, I was actually at the World Trade Center a year before, and we were a couple of guys from the country. We weren't really savvy on New York City, me and my friends, and we were lost. And I just remember we were in that plaza where they have the big globe. And we were trying to figure out where we were going, and my friend said, "Oh, this is the World Trade Center," and I kind of gave it that cursory nod, like, "Yeah, okay, cool, whatever." And I wish I had taken some time to take it in. Obviously, I didn't realize that the buildings would no longer be there anymore a year afterwards, and that they would have play a significant role in my future life. So, you don't think about these things, and that's a lesson to people out there. You never know what's going to happen. Savor every moment, take in everything that you can, because you don't know what the future will bring. So, when you started looking into 9/11, what did you consider to be the strongest evidence for controlled demolition?
Where I found that, or what I myself thought was the most convincing.
Well, what you yourself, what made you say, "Oh my God, this is a controlled demolition"?
That's hard to say, but I think there's a lot, and I think I first, for the circumstantial evidence, the NORAD stand down, the other things, before I was drawn into the structural things of the collapses. I think I have to think back, of course, for that time. But now I know the way they fell down was just so obvious. The free fall, acceleration. Well, it was clear that that there was no support anymore in those towers. So how could that be, that there was no support left?
Yeah, and it's funny, I watched Building 7 come down that afternoon, and I thought it was a controlled demolition, and they just did it to control the fire or something. I wasn't really thinking rationally, and it took years for me to be like, hey, wait a second, you can't do that. Wait, and for people to point it out. It's one of those things that you're being told the official story as you go along. You're not suspecting anything foul is underway other than the story you're being told and believing, because you want to believe it. It's a crisis that's happening, and you're in the pack mentality with the rest of the world. But then there's certain points, certain things that should be obvious to you don't come out of the the background of all the noise of that day until later when someone actually points it out. Now, when you started waking up, what did you do? What other actions have you done in Holland and other 9/11 truth activists in Holland done to try to awaken the people of your country about this tremendous crime?
Yes, I was. It was the ninth celebration, or how do you call it? Not a celebration, but remembrance of the day of 9/11. I wanted to go to Amsterdam and see how many people there would gather and talk about each other, perhaps have a little demonstration or something. I really was curious if there would be any people, and I was astonished to find out that there was only a very small group of people. But still, we had a nice time, and we had a conversation, much conversations, and I really was drawn to those people, little in number, but they were very serious about the business and the whole business. And that day, I decided to do the petition. To be on the petition list as being an architect. I thought, well, this is a thing to do. I could be one of those. At that time, it was 1,300, I believe. I'm an architect. My career had totally changed, and I thought, well, I don't have I had 35 employees, and I didn't have them anymore, so I didn't have the responsibility of those families anymore. And I thought, well, I could put my career in line.
I just like it took you a few years to sign it, and I know that there's pressures that happen. I've talked to architects who want to sign it, but they're afraid. I mean, especially architects from other countries. I've talked to people who are afraid because they might have work here in the United States, and they're concerned about the U.S. government seeing that and not wanting to let them into the country. I mean, whether or not these concerns are rational or these things will happen, this is something that goes on in the back of people's minds when they consider taking a stance on something that is true but is controversial, made controversial by our media establishment, by the government.
Yeah, it's not something you do overnight. You have to really think about it.
That's right. Now, go ahead.
You put yourself in line of something you don't know. You don't know what will happen, so it's a very difficult step. But if you think it's important enough, which I was convinced of, that it was important enough, then that's something you have to do then.
Well, it's important, obviously, for the sake of humanity, and I always try to think, am I being too dramatic when I say things like that? But it's really not, given the weight of this crime and the fact that this lie has been used to perpetuate wars, to steal our civil liberties at home, and this impacts the entire world, as you know. Other countries have followed the United States in this war of terror and backing United States actions in other countries in the Middle East. So we want to make darn sure that we know what really happened that day, and I know what really happened that day. You know what really happened that day. The architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth know what happened that day, but it's getting the world to wake up to this, to acknowledge what is really in front of them, what they really saw on that morning so many years ago, over a decade ago. Now, I'm always interested when I hear about people in other countries championing this cause. I understand why here in the United States people get upset about this realization and decide to do something about it, but people in other countries, for a crime that happened in the United States, I think it takes a special person to even champion something like this when you have that other degree of separation, that it's not in your country. How did you find other people in the Netherlands who were speaking out for 9/11 Truth? How did you locate those others?
Well, it happened not in our backyard, you can say that, but we are very much influenced by what the United States does. And, the Netherlands always are in the footsteps of the United States. So what happens over there with you will happen over here too. I believe there are some differences, luckily, but it's the Western world, and whether it's the Netherlands or Belgium or France, it doesn't differ that much.
So did you go on the internet and see other people in the Netherlands saying, hey, you know, this was a controlled demolition, and meet up with them and start talking to them? How does that work?
The first thing happened was that we started to, with a small group, we started to translate the brochure of architects and engineers, because it was quite to the point, and we thought, well, there's not a Dutch brochure, so we started with that, and then very soon we discovered that there's a translation team, and I thought, well, there's something I can really contribute. So, and I like to translate, and well, I volunteered, and I met the incredible people over the phone every week on Tuesday. I talked with Sandra Jelmi and with Wiebren Visser, who is a fellow countryman, but he's living in Austria. And may I say it, those people are incredible. They are so, how do you say that? They're so full of energy. And, well, they are, how do you say that?
Well, just enthusiastic, and I guess the energy is right, yeah.
Very good, and they helped me, and we were a small team, but we managed to do a lot of things. And I can say we translated a lot of videos, not only in the Netherlands, but Sandra is coordinating a lot of stuff, and she does it in a very, very good way. And we really have translated a lot of videos. You can see that on the YouTube channel of Architects and Engineers, and I'm still proud of that. And with that, with the talk every week, the conference calls, and every time Richard was there, well, we did a lot of things. And from that on, I could ask for all the other petition signers in the Netherlands, and that was the list of people I started to email and ask them to join me in an action group. And with the 10 years in 2011, we wanted to do something about it. So we invited Richard Gage to the Netherlands, and that was a good task to do for us, for the action group. And well, I met a lot of great people through that, and there was a lot of people reacted on. I believe it was a list of 160 at that time, and 10% said yes, I will help. So that's quite something.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's a lot of people too, just who have the time constraints, issues with having to get things in their own lives done, who can't do anything, like you talked about before, when you were more busy with your career. But now, I mean, look at what you're doing. And I'll have to admit, I have to claim ignorance. This is one of the few teams at AE 911 Truth I really don't know much about with the translation team, and how you guys coordinate that. When you're sitting and talking to other people, you're just talking to the people who are focusing on your language. That's what I'm hearing, but correct me if I'm wrong. Do you talk to other people from other countries on that team, or?
Yes, every country has a representative, and they are on the conference call. Not always, because some teams are very small or are not that active. Most of the time, when I was doing that, it was a couple of years ago already. We were with 4 or 5 people on the phone, and we talked a lot, and the rest went with email. But perhaps it's something. If the translation team is not on your not on your eyes, I think they are doing a very great effort to spread the knowledge about the demolitions and the way architects and engineers do that. So, but I can understand, because you're living in America, and well, it's not that interesting. But for European people, where we have a lot of different languages, as you know, it's quite important. And of course, a lot of people, educated people, know how to speak English, understand English, but still, when it's getting technical, it's very important to also translate the technical stuff. So that's what we do, and I think there's a lot of volunteers involved. And because can you imagine a video of 1.5 hours or something? That's quite a lot of lines to translate. So one video might be translated by 4-5 people, and somebody has to prove them, and somebody else has to prove them again. So that's a lot of work, and people are doing that for free, and that's very, very special. And that's what's keep the team going. I think that so many people give their time to this important thing. So it kept me motivated for a long time, and still.
Yeah, and I used to be an English teacher, teach in other countries. I taught English as a second language to people, and so I've known a lot of people that are really into translating, and I can't imagine how difficult that must be when you get into the technical aspects of this, especially for someone like, you're an architect, so you might know more of these words than somebody who is not an architect or an engineer, some of these terms, so they have to expand their own knowledge base, their own English vocabulary in order to rise up to the occasion and perform the mission accurately. So, I mean, it's great. And I can't imagine how difficult it would be, too, to coordinate a conference call with people all over the world when you're dealing with different time zones. I mean, it's one of the reasons I haven't yet had anyone from Australia on this show, because it's like the middle of the night in Australia when it's daytime here. So, I imagine you would have to use email, and I think there's something really special about people from all over the world coming together on an issue like this. It's so important.
It is, yeah.
So, right now, Richard Gage, actually probably it's already happened by the time this airs on Thursday night. We don't know the outcome of it, but Richard Gage is going to be speaking in the Netherlands coming soon. And I saw this on Facebook. I saw a post about this. There's been some controversy surrounding that. So before we dive right into that, give us some background. Talk about Richard Gage's presentation coming up on April 16th and everything that's resulted from his coming.
Well, that's quite a story, and the amazing thing is that I saw the announcement and the question of Richard Gage in, I think it was January, when he announced that he would be in Europe, and I thought, well, that's a great idea. And I was thinking about what the best location would be. And 4 years ago, when we organized 2 of the presentations of Richard in Amsterdam and in Rotterdam, the 2 biggest cities of the Netherlands. And at that time, 4 years ago, I already wanted to have him speak on the Technical University of Delft, the city where I live, the city where I had my education. So I thought it would be very important for him to speak over there. But 4 years ago, it failed, and it was sad. But I tried a lot, but it didn't work out. But this year, the things were a little bit different, and I had a contact who could bring me into contact with somebody else, and that somebody else was the head of a department called Studium Generale. That's a special department on the university who tend to educate students about more than technical sciences. About lots of other things. So they have a variety of subjects that they have presentations on and what so on. So I thought, let's talk with that guy. And I had heard about this man, and I knew that he also was a petition signer of architects and engineers. And so we had a meeting, and I believe we talked for some hours. He had the time, and we discovered we had a lot in common. We are from the same year, we are the same age, and he had a very important position because he's head of the department. His background was aerospace engineering, and he was also quite experienced in controversies. But still, he is a very conscientious scholar, and he knows what he's doing. And well, he's a good man. And we thought it would be a great idea to have it in Delft, and that there's every reason for it to do it because it's a technical university. The architects are being trained over there, engineers are being trained over there. So this is the best place to do that, to have a good discussion about 9/11. And the nice thing is the slogan of the European tour is let's talk about it's time to talk about it. And that's a very appealing sentence. That it's time to talk about it. So we thought, well, yes, that rings a bell. It's time to talk about it. The time is now, and it's 14 years too late, but still, now is the time. And we have to talk about it in Delft at a technical university, because that's where all the architects and engineers are trained. So let them decide whether it's bogus or whether it's a very sound story. And we believe it's a sound story, but let the students and teachers decide again. And if they would, well, and let the chips fall wherever they may fall after that. But we know Richard can handle that challenge. And we know not only Richard, but also our story of architects and engineers. We know we can stand up against every other theory about this, especially against the official theory. So, yes, we both agreed that this was exactly the right place. So, as you can imagine, for Koen Vermeeren, that's his name, let me not forget his name, Koen Vermeeren, it takes some courage to do this. And in my opinion now, our conversation was perhaps 6 weeks ago, 2 months. I consider this guy a hero because he knows exactly what to do. He has managed to make a reservation for the biggest auditorium in Delft. It's the Aula Auditorium. It's got the capacity of the main hall, 1,000 seats, and adjacent to it, another 1,000 seats. And at first we thought, well, let's not take too big of a hall, because when it's half empty, it's not a success. It's only a success when it's filled to the top. So, but we thought this could be something big. So let's take the biggest auditorium, the biggest place. It was a gamble, but we thought, well, who knows? Let's fill it. That's what we said. And yeah, and Koen Vermeeren did everything right. He followed all the given procedures to do this. So yeah, there could not be some mistakes along the line. So, and well, we quite soon discovered that there was quite some attention from the public for this. I mean, that's not strange because it's on the right location. The people make the connection. They say, well, that's serious. I mean, when it's discussed over there in Delft, that means something. So there was already some attention growing, and I made this Facebook event page, and I saw the people who want to come, the number of people who want to come climbing, And we were talking to each other and saying, well, this could be a bigger success than we anticipated. And then I think it's 3 days ago that some reporter from one of the main public television programs in the Netherlands, I might even say the main mainstream media, how do you call this, agency, or no, it's not an agency, broadcasting corporation or something, came to us and contacted us and say, well, what are your driving points? What do you want to reach? What are you doing, in a way? And we said, well, we want to have a technical discussion about something that has never been rightly researched. I was referring to, for instance, the collapse of towers 1 and 2, because there's nothing of it in an official report. I mean, we all know that the commission, the 9/11 Commission report, goes to the point where they say, well, it's about to, and it's evident that it will be, that they fall down. But they never researched the collapses itself. And that was one of the arguments that I said, and we want to have that research. And I think he was quite serious, but he was also thinking, I have to ask the university itself if this is normal, that such a controversial subject is being discussed on the university. So, and then the university reacted a bit too quickly, we think, and they said, well, we are not happy with this discussion. So that's quite a controversy.
Well, they're not happy about it. It's a scientific discussion. Did they say specifically what they're not happy about?
No, well, because it's a controversial subject, and they are not happy with it. That's the first reaction. They were not well informed, and they thought, well, this is something we should consider. It's controversial. The people there are perhaps also all into the official theory and also think, well, this is bogus or something. So yeah, and that came in, that became news, and because it became news, there suddenly was even more attention. I think it tripled, and there was much more hits on the Facebook page, and it really started growing. And even the other papers were writing on the internet about it. And now, the fact that it's called a controversy helped us. And of course, truth is doing its work. That's what's happening over here. People can't be fooled all the time, and well, I think that's happening. That's the essence of what's happening in the Netherlands right now. People are sick and tired of being lied to, and they notice it, they know it, and especially a lot of young people are really aware that there's much, much more to the story.
It's nice to know that the corporate media in the Netherlands has the same habit of shooting itself in the foot that the corporate media entities here in the United States do, because whenever they try to rouse up controversy and try to demonize AE 9/11 Truth or any 9/11 Truth group for simply talking about, in this case, physics and common sense, it rouses more interest. It gets people paying attention. People want to know what all of this is about. And so something that should be the least controversial aspect of 9/11, how the buildings came down, becomes the most controversial because everybody knows that there's questions about this story. And most people that I talk to, and even people that haven't taken a stance on this, agree that it needs to be reinvestigated. They know this controversy is not going away. So that this is just another example of the media completely doing the wrong thing, and much to the benefit not of just to 9/11 Truth, but to the world as well.
This will not go away simply until it's fully researched. fully investigated. That's what's necessary. You can't keep it under the hat. I mean, even the most right-wing newspaper, on the internet, there's a discussion going on with readers, and there's even a poll. And mind you, it's the most right-wing or conservative paper there is. And there's a poll of do you believe in the official theory or do you believe in controlled demolition? And it's 51% in favor of the controlled demolition thesis. So that says a lot. And the discussion, I mean, it's the most popular topic over there. It's 3 times as popular as all the other topics. It's discussed, and it's quite discussed. It's discussed quite seriously also. And the poll is, well, it's 51 to 49, but still, that says a lot. That says a lot in that area where everybody is, what I say, conservative, and that's something very, very special.
Well, here in the United States, we have a show called Washington Journal on C-SPAN, and after a number of people called in over a year and a half requesting that the show bring Richard Gage on, they finally put him on, and if you go to the website of this network that hosts this program, you'll see that Richard Gage's program, his appearance on the show, is the most watched video in their archive, and it's actually up there among the most watched segments of anything, including presidential speeches, congressional hearings on the C-SPAN page. And it's like up there amongst the most watched.
Yeah, just today, I saw the stats of all the videos we've translated. Of course, this one is also one we translated in Dutch, but I believe that the French translation got something about 300,000 views, and that's incredible. So, can you imagine those numbers? It's Europe. Can you imagine 300,000 views? 300,000. The French version, the French subtitled version of that interview. So perhaps Europe is going to show the way to the States in how to treat this subject.
Right, and my point in bringing that up, because you mentioned the poll and how most people think it was controlled demolition, the people polled, the medias in several countries around the world, United States in particular, try to portray the people that are interested in this topic as just being a small minority, as just being a fringe group, that everybody else has moved on and believes the official story. But the fact that there is so much interest, the fact that thinking that it was a controlled demolition wins out in most polls shows that it's not a fringe, small group. All right, this is the general opinion.
And let me tell you another thing. There is no credible opposition. Let me tell you that we are trying very hard to find people who will oppose Richard Gage after his presentation and oppose him with difficult questions and in support of the official theory. We can't find any. We can't find anyone who is willing to oppose him or even able to oppose him. So there is no opposition. No real opposition. So we have to imagine ourselves that there isn't. There are people who shout and they have blogs, but when you ask people to stand there on the stage defending the official theory, you can't find them. So that's something you have to realize, because with this knowledge, you can go on any stage with architects and engineers, with Richard Gage, with the controlled demolition theory, because there is no opposition. That's strange. And also very good to think about. There is no opposition.
Right, just people talking on the internet, but when you ask them to actually come up and debate, and in particular architects or engineers that are willing to debate too, it's a very difficult time finding anyone willing to do that with those actual credentials to their name.
quite telling, isn't it?
Yeah, and now what has the media said in the Netherlands in particular? What are some of the things that they're throwing out there to try to? I'm being presumptuous, but it sounds like they're trying to discourage interest in this event and in this topic, or discourage people from listening to the evidence. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what are some of the things the media is saying about your upcoming event?
No, it's not the media. It's the people they let them talk. I mean, there was a radio interview with a female columnist in a left-wing paper, and she started to calling Richard Gage an idiot. She really did that. And if you're on that level, if you're playing on the person, you know you have lost, because that's not a discussion. That's an ad hominem attack, and when you're using that, you know that you have lost the real discussion. But they give space to people saying that, so it's they let the individuals speak and not themselves, because perhaps they try to stay neutral, but they give a podium to, or a stage to, people who calling Richard names. But there is not a single one who is really opposing his theory. They are all using names, calling him names, and that's all they do.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's pretty much the case here in the United States, and you come to expect it now, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But it's kind of disappointing to hear that this happens in other countries too. And I guess I want to get your take on this, since you're from the Netherlands. Why do you suppose the people of the Netherlands, columnists, people on the street, are so passionate in trying to, like, for instance, call Richard Gage names without even looking into the evidence or addressing any of his points? Why do you think they're so passionate about this? Given the fact that this happened in another country, you would think they'd be more objective.
That's a difficult question. Objective, no. Well, it's the same problem with everyone. It's the how's the psychological term of when you're confused?
The cognitive dissonance?
Yes, that's the term I was searching. The cognitive dissonance. Everybody suffers from that, and of course, when your worldview is in jeopardy, people are reacting in different ways, and one of the ways is to be very passionate either way, because it's quite shaking. It's quite shaking, the reality or the truth. It's heavy, and you react either one way or the other way. But it's changing, and that's something what's obvious right now. And in the Netherlands, especially, we are a complicated country. Well, not that much, but we have, on the one hand, we have a very conservative background, and on the other hand, we had a very large pacifist movement in the early 80s, when we were protesting against, and very peacefully protesting against, the cruise missiles of the States. They were planning to put them in our soil, and we were protesting against them. We were with the hundred thousands, and we are a small country. We are 16.8 million people. That's not much. And when 400,000 people are in the streets protesting against nuclear arms of the States, putting it on our soil, that's quite something. And we tend to think we are open and free thinking, as you all know. We have free legislation of all kinds of things, and yeah, there is under the surface, there is something brewing. I think that spirit of that time is still there, but it's suppressed, but it can't be suppressed for a long time, I think. And it was called a disease in that time, in the early 80s. They called it Hollanditis. That was an American who called it that we are protesting against the nuclear weapons. So we suffered from Hollanditis. And I think there's still something left of that. I don't know how much, but as I said, we can't be fooled all the time. And it has to come out sometime. And I think 2015 is a special year.
How much do you think the reputation of the United States throughout the last, 100 years, even before 100 years we've existed, but it's really ramped up in the 20th century as the late nation of freedom, the nation that essentially came in and helped win World War II and liberated countries in Western Europe? How much do you think that's played into people's reluctance to look into this issue around the world?
A lot. Really a lot. Because we also suffered World War II, and the States were always seen as our liberators, and we had the Marshall Plans, and that's what our older generation will keep thinking. But as you know, the confidence in the States is crumbling. And it's not surprising.
Well, and I think that's one of the successes of this movement, because people will say, well, you haven't gotten a new investigation yet. Here you are 13 years after the event took place and still no investigation. But look at how much people are awakening to other issues. Look at how much people are not believing what the United States government says immediately whenever they try to justify something. Spying on its own citizens, spying on citizens of allegedly, allied countries. Why are you spying on the people of other countries that are supposed to be your friends? Things like this, justifying new military actions overseas when it's not needed.
But do you know what? I've learned a good lesson in my conversations with the journalist. And I already knew it, but now I'm certain of it. And that's something we also have to keep in mind. If we are talking about architects and engineers, and if we talk about the controlled demolitions, the best thing to do is to stay to the point, to keep it only on those demolitions. That's the key point. And any other subject that you take it, surrounding it, and put it more, it tends to make the case weaker. So my lesson is, and perhaps that's something I can say to all my fellow architects and engineers, people, stick to the core of the question. Keep it to the buildings, and then the message will go much further. I mean, it's of course you can't see it in the whole. You have to see it in the whole developments of the world. But if you want to put out the message and you want to go to get it through, keep it very simple, because we are at our strongest, and there we are the most convincing. So, and that's something that stands, and nobody can get us from that. But if we talk about a lot of the other stuff, it gets complicated. Even when you talk about 9/11, I mean, there's a lot of things happened. But if we at Architects and Engineers stick to our theory about the three towers, then I truly believe then we come the furthest. That's something. It's quite an important lesson, I think, and I'm convinced that it works like that.
And that goes right to my point that if we just talk about basic physics, things that apply every single day, even on September 11th, 2001, and talk about this very provable fact of what happened that day, the controlled demolitions of the three towers on 9/11. people will come to their own realization on other issues. You don't need to get into all that. All you got to do is talk about the evidence, the science that proves this.
That's the only thing. And the other things are, how do you call it, troubling the water, or
muddying the water?
Muddying the water, yes. There's a lot of of that happening. And keep away from that, because it's not necessary. You don't have to pile this evidence onto that evidence. Stick to the only three things, and that's the very strange collapses of those three towers. And we have an explanation for it, because they even say that they don't have researched it. They didn't look for explosives. That's something they had to do, but they didn't, because it's the simplest explanation of how those towers came down, and they didn't look for it. So obvious. So if you stick to that point, might be a little bit tedious, because you're talking always about the same thing. But if you keep it in that line, that's the area where we obviously win. We have the strongest arguments, and if we talk about all those other things, they are there, and you don't have to ignore them. But if you want to get our message through, the best thing to do is keep it on those towers. Don't mention Shanksville. Perhaps mention it, but don't discuss it, and don't mention the Pentagon. There's a lot of other people who talk about that, but stick to the core. And that, now I'm repeating myself, but that's it. That's the message.
Well, that's where we got them. I mean, that's what's the most easily proven. And then, people don't think you have an agenda, a political agenda, that you just don't like Bush. That's why you're talking, because that's what you would hear in the beginning of the movement, is that it's just people who don't like Bush. Well, no, we're not talking about Bush. We're not talking about inside job. We're talking about basic physics, which doesn't change even on September 11th. Now, I want to know, how does waking up to this 9/11 controlled demolition evidence and the reality of what happened on that day changed you personally?
It changed me a lot. How can I explain that in a good way? I was living my life. I was an architect. I was very happy with that occupation, and I was very happy making the world a little bit more beautiful. I really loved to design houses, and knowing that families would live there, I was happy with that idea, and I'd love to have continued that. So there's two things happening. First, the economy that came down, and then second, the knowledge about the controlled demolitions, and it changed me. But I've gotten a lot of poorer. I had to sell my house, living in a tiny house right now, and but I think I'm happier. I think I'm happier because it's not a nice place. The world, but trying to change something is rewarding, and there's more than only buying stuff, working your ass off and buying stuff, and there's a lot more. And I have discovered that in the last 6 years, and happy with that. And it's not easy. It really is not easy. It's sometimes too hard. But yeah.
Well, there's a poem here in the United States. I think it's the United States, unless it's British. I'm not sure, but it's called Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley. And it's about some tablet from some long-forgotten king who says, "Look upon my works, ye mighty, and tremble." And it talks about what he did and how there's these monuments to him. But at this point, when the traveler sees it, all the monuments have fallen and turned to dust. So all these things that we leave, these physical things that we leave here in this world, eventually will crumble and be forgotten. But the thoughts you implant in people, what you did for humanity, that goes through generations. It travels, it grows. That is the real legacy, is what you do for humankind, the kind of thoughts that you put in other people, and what you do to make this world a better place. That's really where happiness lies, in my opinion.
Yes, I think so too. And not everybody agrees with that you're changing their lives for the good. But and it's well, perhaps it's not my objective, but I can't stand lies. I can't stand lying, and especially when there's something, those horrible things happening because of those lies. I really can't stand them. So that's my fight.
Now, in our last minute or so, do you have any final thoughts, anything that you want to leave the movement, 9/11 Truth Movement, other people in the Netherlands, or just people around the world with about this issue, about the reality of what happened on 9/11?
Yeah, watch the Netherlands the coming days, and there really is a lot of happening, and we are trying to get this international. Really believe that there's a saying for it: the cat is out of the bag. No, the genie is out of the bottle. That's what I want to say. I have that feeling. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps I'm a little bit too over enthusiastic. But I really believe the genie is out of the bottle. So watch the Netherlands, and it might be that we have a live stream coverage of Richard's presentation in Delft. So this broadcast is after when he has spoken, but there will be a lot more on the internet. I hope we manage that, but watch us.
Right, and I'm sure people will be able to see it somewhere online and be able to watch the presentation. And keep following AE 9/11 Truth. Keep following Richard's European tour. There's a lot going on around this world. Real history is being made here on the internet and in the corners of the world that the mainstream, or I should say corporate media, are not telling you about. So if you really want to see history unfold, turn off your television, turn on broadcasts like this, turn on other alternative news sources, and be part of it. Take part in your future, in your present that makes your future, and do whatever you can to spread awareness about this issue. I'm saying this to the audience, you out there listening right now. Wico Valk, thank you so much for coming on 9/11 Freefall.
You're very welcome. We'll keep in touch.
This program's on every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download MP3s of this show from the Internet Archive by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.